When humanity and dogs joined the Galactic Council, they didn't conquer it by force. They changed its very foundation. Their resilience, adaptability, and refusal to play traditional power games inspired forgotten nations to fight for their own future. The old empires tried to isolate and suppress them, but humanity proved that survival was only possible through unity and mutual support. Instead of building new thrones, they built bridges. Instead of demanding submission, they offered partnership. And when the ancient order collapsed, their example became the beginning of a new era for the entire galaxy. Stay with us if you want to see how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. Ambassador Krovac hated Galactic Council meetings. He hated the pomp, the endless formalities, and the hollow speeches about unity and peace. He hated smoothing down his ceremonial robes just to sit through another argument over trade routes or the correct pronoun usage in interspecies communications, as they had for the past 17 cycles. "This is all such a colossal waste of time," he muttered, his four mandibles clicking in irritation as he stalked down the polished corridors of Proximian Station. His young Freelaxian aide scurried beside him, clutching a data pad almost larger than his own body. "But Ambassador, today's meeting is different," the aide squeaked, excitement radiating from all four of his wide, glassy eyes. "Two new species are being considered for admission." Krovac's compound eyes flicked toward the aide with mild curiosity. "Two? That's rare." "Yes, sir. Both from the same system, the Sol system, third planet." Krovac sighed, already imagining two more chlorophyll-based pacifists ready to fall in line with the photosynthetic alliance. Probably more plants. Maybe with legs this time. What do they call themselves? The aide consulted his pad nervously. "Humans and dogs." Krovac halted mid-stride so abruptly that his aide crashed into the back of his legs. "Repeat that," Krovac said sharply. "Humans and dogs," the aide said again, shrinking under the ambassador's gaze. Krovac snatched the pad. The classification glowed ominously on the screen. Deathworld, Category 12. "Deathworld," he whispered, his exoskeleton paling visibly. "Category 12. Triple verified, sir," the aide stammered. "Extreme temperature variations, high gravity, toxic atmospheric composition, intense radiation, aggressive megafauna, constant tectonic instability, and biological warfare potential beyond charting." Krovac finished in disbelief. The ambassador stood frozen, mandibles twitching. "Nothing survives above Category 8, he said. "Nothing sentient, anyway." "Apparently," the aide whispered. "These two species not only survived but evolved. Adapted." Krovac let out a deep, rattling sigh. "Which diplomatic fool approved their application?" "The Exploratory Committee, sir. They claim these species demonstrated remarkable adaptability." "That's diplomatic code for terrifying but useful," Krovac muttered. "Come on, let's get this nightmare over with." The Grand Council chamber was already buzzing with uneasy energy when they arrived. Representatives from over 400 species filled the massive amphitheater, many speaking in low, nervous tones and casting anxious glances toward the entrance. Krovac settled uneasily into his assigned seat within the Arthropodian Collective's delegation cluster. Beside him, the Beetloid ambassador was visibly twitching his wing cases. "Has anyone seen them yet?" Krovac whispered. "No," the Beetloid replied, "but they've doubled the council guard. Look at the emergency containment protocols. Shields around the speaker's platform." Before Krovac could respond, the chamber lights dimmed. The Grand Minister, a translucent, ancient jelly form, floated to the center of the platform, its bioluminescence pulsing with ceremonial gravity. "Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Council," the minister intoned, voice resonating through the translation matrix. "Today we consider the dual application for council membership of two sentient species from Sol, 3 Earth." A holographic image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly above the platform. Vast oceans gleamed under swirling weather systems. Scattered land masses were stitched with patterns of cities and wild forests. A susurrus of awe and fear rippled through the chamber. 70% liquid dihydrogen monoxide, whispered a floral delegate in horror. "How do they not dissolve?" "The primary applicants call themselves humans," the minister continued. "They have achieved Tier 3 space travel and established colonies on their system's 4th planet and various moons. Their companion species, known as dogs, have been genetically uplifted and now possess intelligence comparable to Tier 4 species." The hologram shifted to show biological data for both species. Dense musculature, hyper-efficient cardiovascular systems, forward-facing eyes, classic predator configuration. Krovac leaned forward, mandibles twitching in disbelief. "Gravity, 2.7 times council standard," the minister continued. Atmosphere containing 21% free oxygen, highly toxic to most species. Regular environmental cataclysms. Aggressive native megafauna. Extensive radiation. Murmurs of horror swept the hall. And yet, the minister said, they not only survived, they flourished. Krovac felt his exoskeleton tighten involuntarily. By the ancestors, whispered the beetloid beside him. What are we about to unleash? The massive doors at the far end of the chamber slid open with a seismic hum. Every representative turned. Silence fell. Two figures entered, walking side by side. The taller, presumably the human, wore a deep blue uniform adorned with gold insignia. Despite the known high gravity of their homeworld, the human moved with an almost predatory grace, steps fluid, shoulders relaxed, utterly confident. Beside the human strode a quadrupedal creature covered in thick fur, wearing a matching uniform modified to its anatomy. Its mouth was slightly open, revealing rows of unsettlingly sharp teeth. They're completely exposed, gasped a gas-based entity. No breathing apparatus. No protective suits. They're breathing our air like it's nothing, Krovac muttered. As the two reached the central platform, the human stepped forward and raised a manipulator limb in greeting. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Council, the human said, voice clear and melodic through the translation matrix. I am Ambassador Josephine Tanaka of Earth. This is Ambassador Cooper, representing the United Canine Nations. The canine bowed its head slightly and rumbled a sound that the matrix rendered as, we bring greetings and hopes for friendship from all dogs of Earth. The Grand Minister's bioluminescence pulsed in a formal welcome pattern. We are honored by your presence, the minister said diplomatically. Might we inquire why you require no protective gear in our atmospheric conditions? Ambassador Tanaka smiled, an expression that revealed her bone-white calcium structures. A wave of discomfort rippled through the chamber. Thank you for your concern, Grand Minister, she said graciously. Our research indicated that while your atmosphere would be uncomfortable for us, it would not be lethal. Humans and dogs are highly adaptable. Uncomfortable, but not lethal, Krovac muttered, his mandibles clicking nervously. They're standing in what would kill most species, and they call it uncomfortable. Beside him, the beetloid ambassador twitched violently. Look at their eyes, he hissed. Classic predator gaze. Forward-facing for depth perception. And they're smiling while doing it, Krovac added in horror. This was not going to be a normal council session. It was going to be an unforgettable one. And Earth was about to change everything. The chamber remained deathly silent as the two Earth ambassadors stood before the council. The assembled representatives were trained diplomats, veterans of countless first contact ceremonies, used to all manner of peculiarities. But none had ever seen anything like this. Deathworlders, real ones, not barely clinging to life, not desperately begging for aid, but standing tall, proud, and entirely unafraid. The Grand Minister hesitated, a delay so slight it would be imperceptible to most species, but Krovac caught it. Even the oldest beings in the galaxy weren't sure how to proceed. Finally, the minister floated closer. We welcome your application to the Galactic Council. We are, however, obligated to perform a standard suitability assessment. Of course, Ambassador Tanaka said with an easy smile. We welcome any questions. Cooper wagged his tail slowly, but deliberately, causing several aquatic delegates to flinch at the sudden movement. The minister gestured toward the prosecutor's dais. A Solari delegate, pale, amorphous, and twitching with unease, floated forward. The council notes, the Solari said, voice quivering, that humans have developed and deployed mass destruction technologies capable of planetary sterilization. Tanaka nodded, calm. That is correct, she said. We have developed nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. A shudder ran through the amphitheater. And yet, she continued smoothly, we have placed increasingly strict controls on their usage, both domestically and abroad. Their mere existence has served to deter large-scale conflict for over a century. You rely on threats of mutual destruction to maintain peace? The Solari gasped. Sometimes the fear of annihilation, Tanaka said, her voice steady as steel, is the only thing that keeps aggressors from acting. Krovac found himself scribbling notes frantically. This human, she didn't flinch, didn't apologize. She owned their darkness like armor. The next question came from a being of pure crystalline structure, its voice a high-pitched chime. How does your companion species, the dogs, fit into this unsettling legacy? Ambassador Cooper stepped forward, tail swishing lightly. We have fought alongside humans in countless battles. We have pulled them from burning rubble. We have guided them through frozen wastelands. We have stood at their side and sometimes at their graves. The translation matrix carried the solemnity of the words flawlessly. Even hardened war species like the Krovarian delegation bowed their heads in respect. Our loyalty, Cooper said simply, is not to governments. It is to the bonds we choose. And we have chosen He looked up at Tanaka, pure, unyielding faith burning in his golden eyes. Krovak felt an alien sensation in his thorax, something disturbingly close to admiration. A rotating panel of counselors launched further questions. Explain your rapid expansion beyond your solar system. Necessity, Tanaka replied. Our homeworld's resources are finite. Our drive to explore is infinite. Explain your conflict-driven history. A crucible, she said. Hard lessons learned in blood. We don't forget them. Explain your tolerance for extreme environmental hazards. Tanaka allowed herself a chuckle. You'd be amazed what you can get used to when the alternative is death. Some of the less hardened species visibly recoiled. And then came the question everyone had been dreading, delivered by a Xandari elder whose species had mastered diplomacy thousands of years before Earth invented agriculture. Given your nature, the Xandari asked softly, why should the council trust you? The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Ambassador Tanaka straightened her posture, the lines of her face hardening. You shouldn't, she said. Gasps. Outright gasps. Even Krovak's mandibles hung slightly ajar. You should, she continued, her voice slicing through the stunned silence. Watch what we do. Judge us by our actions, not your fears. We don't ask for trust. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle like stones. We ask for the chance to earn it. It was a masterstroke. Blunt. Honest. Disarming in a way no traditional diplomat would dare attempt. Trust was cheap. Earning it was priceless. And in that moment, even Krovak, cynical, jaded Krovak, believed her. But not everyone was so moved. From the shadowed ranks of the Old Guard, the founding members of the Council, unease hardened into quiet resistance. Species who had reigned unchallenged for millennia sensed a threat they could not crush with diplomacy or delay with bureaucracy. Humans and dogs would not bend easily. They would not forget slights. They would not obey simply because tradition demanded it. And worst of all, they brought with them an idea even more dangerous than violence. An idea humanity had carried in their blood since the first time a fire was lit against the dark. Change. Irreversible. Unstoppable. Necessary. And the old empires trembled before it. The tide of the hearing had shifted, subtly at first, like the distant pull of an unseen current. Whispers rippled through the council benches not in fear, but in curiosity. Species from the lower and mid-tiers, those long stifled under the weight of ancient bureaucracy, leaned forward, their bioluminescent skins flickering with something dangerously close to hope. Krovak watched it happen with a sinking feeling in his thorax. He had seen the signs before, once, long ago, when another species rose too fast, burned too bright, and was crushed for it. But this time, it was different. The humans and their canine partners weren't demanding power. They weren't even asking for recognition. They were offering a choice. And that was far, far more dangerous. The questioning continued, growing sharper. A delegate from the Council's enforcement authority, a cold, serpentine creature known as Kale-Set, uncoiled itself to full height, scales catching the chamber's light like blades. Ambassador Tanaka, it hissed, how would humanity respond if the Council were to deny your petition for membership? A loaded question. A test. Krovak scribbled frantically, antennae twitching. Would she threaten them? Would she plead? Tanaka didn't blink. We would continue as we have, she said simply. We would trade. We would explore. We would survive. And if forbidden? Kale-Set pressed. The human smiled, and this time, the smile was all teeth. Try. The chamber recoiled as if struck. Even Ambassador Cooper growled low, his fur bristling slightly. Krovak's aide made a small whimpering sound. There it was. The heart of Deathworlder psychology laid bare. Defiance not as rebellion, but as existence itself. A warning carved into flesh and spirit. You may crush us. You may scatter our bones. But you will never make us kneel. The Grand Minister wisely intervened, voice pulsing with calming resonance. Let us not speak of conflict. Let us instead explore what humanity might offer the Council. Tanaka inclined her head gracefully. We offer what we are, she said. Strength born of survival. Creativity born of necessity. Loyalty stronger than blood. She gestured to Cooper, who sat beside her like a sentinel. We offer partnerships, not domination. A ripple of acknowledgement spread among the younger species delegations. They understood. They had lived under the shadow of founding species who called it guidance, but practiced subjugation. The humans were rough, dangerous, unpredictable, but they were honest about it. An aquatic representative floated forward, translucent fins flickering with uncertainty. Your records indicate, it burbled, that your kind have survived events categorized as extinction level multiple times. How? Tanaka spread her hands. We adapt. How? We refuse not to. It wasn't an explanation. It was a truth. And it hit the chamber harder than any weapon. The procedural section of the hearing drew to a close. Now came the most sacred tradition of the Council, the pledging. Applicants were invited to make a final statement, a vow of peaceful intent. Krovak leaned forward sharply. This would be the moment. Most species groveled. They begged for acceptance, swore loyalty, promised submission to Council law. How would humans approach it? The Grand Minister gestured. The floor is yours, Ambassador. Tanaka and Cooper stepped forward together, side by side. Species so different, bipedal and quadrupedal, yet moving as one. Cooper spoke first, voice deep and resonant. We pledge to seek friendship, not obedience. Tanaka continued without pause. We pledge to offer strength, not supremacy. Cooper. We pledge to defend those who stand with us. Tanaka. And we pledge to endure. No matter what comes. They bowed together, a gesture learned, perhaps, from ancient Earth rituals, and waited. The chamber erupted in a storm of sensation. For the first time in centuries, there was no unified reaction. Some delegates flashed acceptance. Some glowed with furious denial. Some simply sat frozen, uncertain. Krovak's mandibles twitched. It wasn't just a pledge. It was a manifesto. An announcement that Earth would not fit into the old ways. And if denied a seat at the table, they would simply build a new one. High above the platform, the Judgment Loom activated, an ancient artifact that channeled the will of the Council into a single, binding decision. Each delegation cast its vote, their energies weaving into the loom's crystalline heart. Krovak's own turn came. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, an unforgivable lapse for a seasoned diplomat. Vote yes, and invite chaos into the fragile stability he had served for centuries. Vote no, and risk pushing the humans further away, into dangerous independence. He cast his vote, and waited. The loom pulsed. Once, twice, and then it blazed a color unseen in living memory. A tie. Perfect equilibrium between acceptance and rejection. The council had spoken, and said nothing. The decision would fall to the Grand Minister. The ancient jelly form floated forward, movement slow with solemnity. Earth, the minister intoned, voice trembling with something that might have been awe or fear, and the United Canine Nations are hereby granted provisional membership. The chamber exploded into a cacophony of sound. Some cheered. Some wailed. Some simply sat in stunned silence. Krovak exhaled slowly. It had happened. The galaxy had changed. Not with a bang. Not with an invasion. But with two Deathworlders standing side by side, offering loyalty and warning. And the old powers knew, deep in their bones, that nothing would ever be the same again. The official ceremony dissolved into organized chaos. Delegations clustered together, forming huddles of chittering, muttering, pulsating anxiety. Old alliances whispered frantic strategies. Newer species, less shackled by tradition, openly approached the humans and dogs, offering greetings, trade proposals, and cautious friendship. Ambassador Tanaka and Ambassador Cooper moved through the crowd like veteran navigators steering through a storm, polite, composed, wary. Krovak observed from his corner booth, antennae twitching furiously. He recognized the shifting of power before most of the chamber did. Humans had cracked the facade of the Galactic Council in a single day. Not by war. Not by conquest. Simply by existing. Within hours of the provisional membership announcement, the Council's bureaucratic machinery spun into panicked overdrive. Petitions were filed challenging the minister's decision. Old Guard coalitions demanded immediate restrictions on human and canine access to military technologies. Emergency committees formed to study the cultural ramifications of Deathworlder integration. Krovak read the preliminary documents and nearly laughed. They were trying to put the genie back in the bottle. It was too late. The humans hadn't just joined the Council. They had infected it. Every conversation now included phrases like adaptive strategies, post-Deathworld integration, and dynamic resilience modeling. Earth hadn't signed a treaty. They had started a revolution. Meanwhile, Earth's delegation wasted no time. Within days, Tanaka's aide submitted proposals for mutual defense agreements, joint research initiatives, trade partnerships with frontier worlds desperate for technological uplift. The dogs, whose easy charm belied their lethal capabilities, established relationships with security forces across the Council's sectors. Their message was simple: loyalty freely given, protection unwavering. Small species, those living under the threat of predation or exploitation, flocked to them. With humans and dogs, one aquatic envoy was overheard saying, "We finally have a chance to survive." Krovak recorded that quote personally. It would be worth its weight in credits in the coming cycles. Resistance, of course, grew equally fast. The Skren League proposed economic sanctions. The Kaleset Consortium lobbied for strict human movement restrictions across Council territories. Most chillingly, whispers began of a secret initiative, Containment Protocol Theta, a plan to quietly quarantine Earth's influence before it could destabilize the entire political order. Krovak filed those whispers carefully away. He had survived countless regime shifts. He intended to survive this one too. The humans, for their part, seemed blissfully aware of the storm brewing around them and entirely unconcerned. Ambassador Tanaka appeared at council meetings armed not with veiled threats, but with facts, data, offers of mutual gain. She spoke plainly, listened sharply, and made no apologies. Ambassador Cooper charmed security teams, engineers, even the most hardened bureaucrats. There was something disarming about the way he sat attentively through boring committee meetings, tongue-lolling slightly, before offering observations so piercing they left entire delegations scrambling for rebuttals. It wasn't a performance. It was who they were. Survivors. Adapters. Pack builders. And now, the galaxy was becoming their pack. One particularly tense evening, Krovac found himself in a diplomatic lounge, nursing a bitter extract beverage and trying to make sense of the reports flooding his datapad. The humans had secured bilateral agreements with 17 frontier worlds. The dogs had initiated joint disaster response training with 3 mid-tier species. An independent communications relay, ArcNet, was now operational, promising faster, decentralized information sharing outside of council oversight. It was chaos. It was beautiful. And it was terrifying. As he brooded, a shadow fell across his table. He looked up. Ambassador Tanaka stood there, her expression unreadable. "Ambassador Krovac, isn't it?" she asked, her tone casual. Krovac clicked his mandibles in acknowledgement. "Mind if I join you?" He gestured to the empty seat warily. She sat. Silence stretched between them. Finally, she spoke. "We know what's coming," she said softly. Krovac stiffened. "We know the old powers won't accept us easily. Some will try to sabotage us. Others will try to isolate us." She smiled thinly. "We're used to that." Krovac studied her, torn between admiration and dread. "You won't fight back conventionally," he said slowly. "No," she agreed. "Why waste time fighting when we can simply outlive the resistance?" She raised her drink in a mock toast. "To survival, Ambassador." Krovac hesitated, then clinked his cup gently against hers. "To survival," he echoed. And deep down, he knew. The future didn't belong to the strongest, or the oldest, or even the wisest. It belonged to those who refused to be broken. And Earth, rough, stubborn, Deathworld Earth had no intention of breaking. In the darkened council corridors, far from prying eyes, the first seeds of a new era took root. Not in grand declarations. Not in bloody revolutions. But in whispered promises, shared risks, and alliances forged by necessity. A storm was coming. And this time, humanity was not standing alone. They were leading the charge. One step, one breath, one heartbeat at a time. In the following cycles, change accelerated beyond even the boldest projections. Frontier worlds, long ignored by the Council's core bureaucracies, rallied around Earth's example. Their governors signed compact after compact, aligning not under a centralized Terran rule, but under a shared philosophy. Survive. Adapt. Stand together. The ArcNet communication system, initially dismissed as a human curiosity, exploded in popularity. Instant, decentralized, encrypted, it offered colonies and independent stations a way to share information without the bottleneck of council oversight. For the first time in living memory, the galactic periphery spoke with one voice, not in submission, but in stubborn defiance. And at the center of it all stood humanity and their canine allies, not as rulers, but as catalysts, not conquerors, connectors. Of course, the old guard did not sit idle. Containment Protocol Theta was activated. Federation fleets repositioned near human-aligned systems, cloaked in the excuse of anti-piracy operations. Trade sanctions strangled shipments to ArcNet-supporting colonies. Propaganda waves swept through the mesh, depicting humans as violent upstarts, their canine partners as genetic abominations. The campaign had an effect. Some worlds wavered. Some council delegates withdrew their tentative support. But not all, and not enough. Because humans didn't fight the propaganda with counter-propaganda. They fought it the way they fought everything else. By refusing to die. When sanctioned colonies faced shortages, human freighters ran the blockades. When council fleets harassed frontier stations, human warships, smaller, scrappier, bled them dry with hit and fade tactics. When refugee worlds cried out, it was human and canine volunteers who answered, patching up broken habitats, repelling raiders, rebuilding shattered lives. They didn't argue they were worthy. They proved it. Every day. Every scar. Every salvage breath. Meanwhile, within the council itself, fractures widened. Younger species, long treated as junior partners, began questioning old alliances. Neutral worlds demanded emergency sessions to reconsider voting procedures rigged in favor of founding species. Academic enclaves published unauthorized studies praising Terran resilience and adaptability. The great halls that once echoed with orderly debates now buzzed with barely concealed chaos. And at every meeting, Ambassador Tanaka and Ambassador Cooper sat quietly, watching it all unfold, patient, implacable, inevitable. They didn't have to push. Gravity did the work for them. One night, under the fractal night sky of Proximian Station, Krovac found himself once again across a table from Tanaka. He was tired, soul-tired, in ways he hadn't felt in decades. "You're tearing down everything we built," he said, not accusingly, but as a man stating a simple truth. Tanaka sipped her drink, something dark and bitter smelling. "No," she said. You're doing that yourselves. We're just offering alternatives. Krovak exhaled heavily. And when the collapse comes? Tanaka shrugged. We'll help pick up the pieces. Build something better. Krovak laughed, low, bitter, almost fond. You really believe that? She looked him dead in the eyes. We don't have the luxury of not believing it. He saw it then. The core truth. Humanity hadn't survived their death world by luck or strength alone. They survived because hope was their most dangerous weapon. Not naive hope. Weaponized hope. The kind that digs its fingers into the shattered earth, refuses to let go, and dares to dream of gardens amid the ashes. Weeks later, the inevitable happened. An unauthorized council fleet attempted to blockade a critical ArcNet relay hub at the edge of Orion sector. They expected quick capitulation. Instead, they found themselves facing a ragtag defense force of human, canine, and multi-species volunteers, under-equipped, undersupplied, but unbreakable. The battle wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. It was chaos made flesh. But when the dust cleared, the relay still stood. And the council fleet limped home, defeated not by superior firepower, but by an idea they could not kill. Resilience. The aftermath shook the galaxy. News of the battle spread like wildfire. Songs were written, monuments built, and on 1,000 worlds, beings who had never considered rebellion before suddenly saw a path forward, not through war, not through conquest, but through stubborn survival. The old council's days were numbered, not because humanity overthrew them, because humanity had shown everyone else they didn't have to be ruled. They could endure. They could build. They could choose. At the next full assembly of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Tanaka stepped forward, Cooper at her side, and made a simple, world-breaking statement. The era of imposed order is over. No fanfare. No demands. Just a truth spoken aloud at last. And deep in the council's marble heart, something ancient cracked. Something final. And something new was born. The end didn't come with war drums or burning cities. It came with empty chairs. One by one, delegations walked out of the Grand Council chamber. Not with anger. Not with rebellion. With quiet finality. Planets and systems that had once feared isolation realized they didn't need the Council to survive. They had each other. They had ArcNet. They had the stubborn lessons taught, not preached, by humans and their canine companions. The Council tried to save face. Issued proclamations. Threatened embargoes. Declared breakaway worlds rogue states. But the words rang hollow. The galaxy had already moved on. On Earth, they didn't celebrate. There were no grand parades, no self-congratulatory broadcasts. Victory, if it could be called that, was a grim, sobering thing. They had cracked open a rotten empire. Now came the hard part, building something better. Not a new throne, not a new council. Something looser. Messier, more honest. A network of worlds connected not by domination, but by trust, trade, and shared survival. It would be ugly. It would be slow. It would be real. Fleet Marshal Eleanor Park, descendant of one of the first Arc Compact founders, stood atop the shattered remains of an ancient council monument on the neutral station of Cassivar Prime. Behind her, banners of dozens of species fluttered in artificial wind. Humans, canines, Trinity, Krenari, even defected Kaleset splinter colonies. Not united under one symbol. United by choice. By stubbornness. By a common understanding. That survival was a team sport now. That no empire, no ancient bloodline, no bureaucratic machine would ever again dictate who was allowed to dream beyond the stars. In a makeshift amphitheater built from salvaged ship hulls, Park addressed the galaxy's newest coalition. Her voice carried raw and unpolished across the throng. We are not perfect. Murmurs of agreement. We will stumble. Louder now, nods from the gathered delegates. But we will not fall alone. A roar not of triumph, but of solidarity echoed through the station. It was messy. It was imperfect. It was alive. Krovak, now retired, watched the broadcast from a quiet cafe orbiting a minor moon far from the galactic core. He nursed a warm beverage and chuckled to himself. The humans hadn't just survived. They hadn't just adapted. They had taught the galaxy something far more dangerous. That survival was not enough. That to endure was noble. But to endure together, through trust, through stubborn hope, through relentless, imperfect bonds, was unstoppable. He raised his glass in salute to the screen, where Ambassador Tanaka and Ambassador Cooper stood smiling amid the sea of species. Well played, Krovak whispered. Well played indeed. Out beyond the newly drawn star charts, deep in the unknown, new worlds awaited. New dangers. New dreams. And humanity, hand in paw with their oldest, fiercest allies, was already preparing. Already moving forward. Already reminding the stars. They had survived death worlds. They had survived extinction. They had survived the oldest powers of the galaxy. And they would survive whatever came next. One heartbeat. One breath. One step at a time. Together. Always.